Welcome to the Game of Thrones Academy. This is a different kind of a Song of Ice and Fire YouTube channel. This is Itamar.
Hello.
He's a history teacher, he's a biblical studies teacher, and an amateur historian. I'm Gil, I'm a writer and a blogger. And we're going to talk about a Song of Ice and Fire, but from a historical perspective, looking at it from history, real political processes and political progress. We think we can add something really cool to the Song of Ice and Fire conversation out there, because we're leaving the story, going into real history, real events, and then going back to the story with new insights, new ideas. We think it adds a new layer to the whole experience of reading the books and watching the show. Like the simplest example we can give to show you what it means is that the whole story of A Song of Ice and Fire, it's set in the Middle Ages.
The late Middle Ages.
The late Middle Ages. And people dress like they did in the Middle Ages. They have swords like they did in the Middle Ages, and horses, and they have the beards and the long hair and all that. So even though it's fantasy, it's set in a specific time and place, not in ancient Rome or ancient Greece or in the Renaissance or modern times. So this is the kind of stuff we're going to talk about, only more in depth. And at the end of every episode, Itamar here, he will bring up a bold prediction about what's going to happen in the Song of Ice and Fire based on the subject we discussed.
Based on real history.
Real history, specifically what we discussed.
It's more
in the
like
episode.
it will be more like an educated guess. Yes.
A bold prediction.
But a bold prediction.
He's trying to get off the hook. It's a bold prediction. We're going to hold you to it.
I will stand behind my prediction.
You're going to stand behind your prediction.
I will stand.
You'll have no choice.
My educated guess.
Anyways, okay, so let's start our first video. Today we are going to talk about the differences between East and West in A Song of Ice and Fire.
And in the 15th century AD.
Why specifically the 15th century AD?
Okay, like you said, we know that the starting point of the story is that the civil war in Westeros. So, and it is known that George R. R. Martin said it a few times, that his inspiration for the start of the story, the start of the Game of the Thrones, was the War of the Roses in England.
Okay, and when was that?
And this was in the second half, late 15th century AD.
Okay, so when we look at the world in the 15th century, the differences between East and West, what similarities do you see between that and A Song of Ice and Fire?
A lot of similarities. And first, when I read the books, in my first time when I read the book, one of the bigger examples for me, which made it a different kind of fantasy book, was his historical accuracy. Even though it's a fantasy book, I always had the feeling like I'm reading a historical novel. Only
it starts with a name, right? The names of Westeros.
First of all, Westeros. Okay, so he's implying something.
It's West
and Essos.
Okay, East.
So East as a contrast to the West.
Okay. So what we're talking about is it's really set in the books. We're not guessing anything.
No, it's not guessing. It's set in the books. And he said it many times, that is, he felt like he's writing history, and I'm feeling like I'm reading history.
So when did you come up with that? When did it first?
When you read fantasy, and I read a few fantasy novels before, so you read it and you realize there are kings, and there are warriors, and there are magicians in the West, in the East, in the North, in the South.
Okay.
So everywhere you go in a fantasy world, some of them are elves or dwarves or whatever, but everyone has a king, everyone has magicians, everyone is like, this is the same everywhere. Everyone uses horses and swords and stuff.
Okay, and in A Song of Ice and Fire?
In A Song of Ice and Fire, the first time I really noticed, it is not the first time, but one of the first time I noticed it's not an ordinary fantasy book, is when Daenerys reaches Kars for the first time.
Okay, that's in the second book.
This is in the second book. Okay. When I read the first scene when she reaches Kars, and
Okay.
the stuff that
Can you read us
I will read
that
it.
part so we can understand?
This is when Dani stands before the wall.
In Karth, and she wants to go in.
In which she wants to go in.
Okay.
Kars is the greatest city that ever was or ever will be. Pied Priya told her, back among the bones of West Toloro. It is the center of the world, the gate between north and south, the bridge between east and west, ancient beyond memory of man, and so magnificent that Satos the Wide put out his eyes after gazing upon Kars for the first time.
So by comparison to Karth, the cities in the west are pretty ugly.
Yeah.
Right? Like King's Landing.
So I read this and I say, okay, she's not reaching here like a culture with a different king and just far away. She's reaching here a very ancient culture,
More advanced.
more advanced, established society that look upon itself as the beacon of the world. And it reminded me, and the passage that East and West, bridge between East and West, reminded me of Constantinople, of late 15th century Constantinople, before the Ottoman...
in today's Turkey?
In today's Turkey, Constantinople is Istanbul, is today Istanbul. And back then, before the Ottoman conquest, before it was a Christian, Muslim capital, it was the Byzantine capital. And it was the trade hub of the world, like the known world, like Karth. And it was closer to Europe geographically, but it really did connect East and West by controlling the Mediterranean.
And like the city itself was part east, part west, right?
Yeah, part
it
east,
still
part it still is.
Okay, so let's sum up. So Karth is an advanced culture, advanced city, far more advanced than anything we have in the West, in Westeros.
Exactly.
Right? But the story is told, the story of A Song of Ice and Fire is told from the perspective of Westeros.
Of Westeros, exactly.
So what does that tell you about history? How can you connect that to history at that time? And back to the books.
Let's say I always tell my students when I talk about this period, and students I teach in high school, so a lot of students have this how do you say, chutzpah, this notion that they are superior, like every people.
Like Western people.
Like Western people, yeah, they're like the model of proper culture is a Western model, like modernism and science and advance and progress, and everything that is not like that is missing something, is primitive, is lacking.
Okay.
And I always tell them when I'm connecting this to history, I always tell them, if you were an alien that somehow would reach Earth in the late 15th century, and he will travel the world with a local guide, local Earthling guide. And he will ask, this local guide will ask this alien, who do you think in 500 years' times, which culture, which political system, which geographical era will rule the world? This alien would never have guessed domination of the world will come from the West. He will guess maybe the Ming dynasty, one of the most successful dynasties in China, that will dominate the world. He will go straight to the Chinese and say, okay, they will rule the world. He will never have guessed reaching Europe. We would never guess it would come
because
from
there was a lot of infighting.
Then there were like the third world. We today have the first third world. Europe was the third world there, like a backward country, cold. Very primitive in technology-wise and culturally wise and political-wise. A lot of stripes and no stability, almost no stability.
Like Westeros.
Just like Westeros, exactly.
Okay, so that's the 15th century.
That's the 15th century.
But the book, okay, so when you see the fact that the books, the story is still being told from a perspective of a European person living in Europe. That's called like Eurocentrism. You wanna tell us a little bit about it? How it manifests itself in the story?
First of all, the maps.
Okay.
The maps. You read the maps. You know about the maps in Westeros.
Yeah.
Westeros is not exactly in the center, but the perspective is putting Westeros in the center, and the east is far away.
We don't even really know 100%. Not even all the maps show Karth because it's too
far
east,
away.
Too far
Exactly.
East.
And it's like when I see the map of Westeros and all the maps in the World of Ice and Fire,
Right.
you can see it's really a map that was drawn by a European in the 15th century. Or
How so?
there is only North Africa. You cannot see all of Africa.
Okay.
The
What
poles are like no man's land. No one knows. No one traveled there or explored there. Who lived to draw a map.
What about China in the Far East?
It's very far. Yeah, they know about China. Of course, they know about China. They know about the East from stories and
And how is China called in the Song of Ice and Fire?
Yiti. They call Yiti. They are
very Chinese.
Yeah, they're very Chinese. And when you read World of Ice and Fire, when you read about the Yiti's culture and history, it's pretty similar to the Chinese history.
Okay.
And they are described there as very advanced people. Very, very advanced people.
Okay, so we know the story of A Song of Ice and Fire is told from the perspective of European people at the 15th century.
Mm-hmm.
So how did people European people during the 15th century look out to the east? What do they see when they look to the east?
They didn't exactly looked at the east because they didn't have like a worldly perspective about the world, international perspective.
Okay.
But the east was like magical. You know, they knew the east is very advanced. They knew a lot of the stuff. This is where the centuries when trade became very, very important, and the European cultures started to open up for trade and get a lot of trade. So they knew all the stuff came from the east. Paper, jewels, technology, spices. And they knew from merchant tales that it's very, very, there are a lot of people there, very populated.
So in Essos also we see Bravos and all in Slaver's Bay and Karth, all the big trading cities.
Big trading, urban culture. Very urban culture. And not village and landowning culture like in Europe or Westeros.
Okay.
Urban culture, trade culture.
What about political
centralized
systems?
governments?
You had that in the 15th century in the East?
In the East, of course. If you look at Europe in the 15th century, you see this feudal system with no central government, no central power. No one to take monopoly on.
Like everyone swears an oath to his lord.
So everyone swears an oath to his lord. We will in a later episode we will cover this more. In the East,
in contrast.
When we say the East, let's talk about China, okay? And let's talk about some ancient kingdoms there. In China, as an example, you have a centralized power, the Ming Dynasty, an emperor, a centralized state. A central feeling.
So it's not 7 kingdoms.
It's not one kingdom. It's one kingdom, one state, unified, culturally unified, linguistically more or less unified.
Yeah,
bureaucratic system, working bureaucratic system, and even we can be careful and even say you had some sort of social mobility. Even if you were born a peasant, you wouldn't have to die a peasant. You could, if you had some skills,
get the test,
you become a bureaucrat. And you are a bureaucrat, and this is like you jackpot.
Yeah, and you didn't have that in Europe or Westeros.
Not at all. It's only back
more
then.
Class
system, heritage system, blood system. You had really a starting of urban culture in Italy.
Italy is? What is Italy in the story?
The Free Cities.
The Free Cities.
The Free Cities is Italy in the 15th century.
Okay, but
we'll talk about it in a later episode.
Okay. So we're talking about how the East is always viewed as magical and mysterious, like Karth, and of course like Ashai, super mysterious, magic emanating
Dragons
out.
came from the east.
Dragons came from the east, and the Lord of Light,
The Lord of Light
came from
from the
Ashai.
east.
So this is it's pretty similar. And do you have like in this area ancient Eastern empires that used to exist, like we had like in Egypt or Persia? Do you have some kind of something like that in Song of Ice and Fire?
Okay, Valyria, let's say. Valyria is Rome. And I think it's pretty clear that Valyria is the Roman Empire.
And Slavers Bay?
Slavers Bay, it's a mixture of the relationship between Slavers Bay, the Giscari and the Valerian is very similar to the Carthaginians.
The Persians also,
and
maybe?
the Romans. And also Persian, like the architecture is very Persian.
Yeah.
Harpy is very similar to Persian and I think Assyrian tablets that we have and paintings that we have.
Okay.
Of course the pyramids is like it's Egypt, and and we know
we have Giscari pyramids.
Giscari pyramids, and the local Giscari watching the pyramids knows that they were built by an ancient culture and very big culture, but is very very far from it.
Yeah.
Like the Egyptian in the 15th century.
Even ethnically, they're not the same.
Even ethnically, they're
like
not
the
same
Egyptians.
people. Like the Egyptians. The Egyptians in the 15th century, they are mostly Arabs now, and they have a different language now. But they looked at the pyramids and all the palaces and stuff, and they say, "Whoa!"
And they felt as though
it's ours, even though we are very, very, very far.
Okay.
So it's also a very.
It's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. So before we get, let's set up our Itamar's bold predictions for this video. So we say the East is better placed than the West, more advanced economically, culturally, politically, more stable, right? But this is like a start. This is at the start of a Song of Ice and Fire. But you have a bold prediction based on the comparisons that we just did between East and West in the story and in the 15th century. Okay, go ahead.
My bold prediction is that when we meet Westeros versus Essos, Westeros is the backward country. When we talk about it, remember you said when you in the fixed books, I think, Zaro Zohan gives Danny a map of the world.
Okay.
And he puts it like it's a most huge map, right. Most beautiful map. Artisans work on it for hours. Where is Westeros? Somewhere there.
Okay.
Not important.
So this is the start of the books, and what your prediction is?
My prediction is the decline of the East and the rise of the West. Of course, something to do with dragons.
Okay.
But and economic change. And
how so? What do you think will happen to the East? East that includes the free cities.
Free cities.
And free
cities is like I consider closer, except maybe Volantis, like maybe closer to Westeros.
And also Pentos. An army is on
Pentos, the Slaver Bay, all the ancient empires. Kars as well. They will decline, not eradicated, but decline. So I think my prediction is that we will see by the end of the books the start of the decline of the East, and a major decline, which will correlate with the rise of the West.
Because this really happened
in history
at this time.
At this time, not exactly at this time, but let's add 100 years after. Let's say the start of the 17th century, 16 AD. It already happened. You could already started guessing this trend will.
If you were astute.
If you were astute, like Tyrion. Yeah. So if you were Tyrion in the 15th century, reaching Constantinople, or Rome, which was also a major city. Okay. And you will see the deterioration and
you see, first of all, everything looks grand.
Grand, exactly. Everything grand, and you read about it in the books, and you liked it. And
but then you read
it, you see the whores, the slaves, the deteriorating buildings,
I think the slaves is very important because the whole Eastern economy and culture is based on slaves, and while the West is more backwards, they don't have any slaves.
Yeah, they have slaves, but
it's a different kind.
It's a different kind of slave, exactly.
Because it's a feudal system. It's not a 100% slave. So this could be And also now Danny is in the East trying to eradicate the slave trade and the slave culture.
You can already see it in the books starting to happen. A Western girl,
right,
taking territory from Eastern empires, ancient Eastern empires,
and destroying their culture,
like taking her culture, her values, and
stealing them,
instilling them in their territory.
And
much destruction.
Everything crashes and burns.
Everything crashes and burns.
And we can guess that it will get worse because now the Dothraki will come.
She will risk cars. She will pillage cars. She will every city on the
way.
way.
Think she will pillage cars?
Think that she will reach Volantis. She will pillage Volantis. She will destroy Volantis. Not
destroy. No, Volantis is close, but Kars is far. You think she will reach all the way to Kars?
Yeah, she had dragons,
She has dragons. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, she could reach with dragon cars.
And first, she need to go to the west. Need to go to east.
To destroy the east and then.
I don't know. But my bold predictions are not that bold because
No, it is. I think it is a bold prediction. You say the east. I hadn't thought of it when I read it before. Before we discussed it, I hadn't thought of it. After we discussed it a little bit, then I saw all the signs, like the part that I read about Tyrion, that you can see that the east is in decline. I don't think most readers who are not really into history can connect the east to the west. I think it's great. So let's sum things up. We talked about the differences between east and west in A Song of Ice and Fire, and how they are pretty much similar to what happened historically in the 15th century, where the story is set. The east is more advanced culturally, economically than the west, but more stable. But then you can see the start of the east starting to decline, to rot from inside, because it's stagnant, and this could mean something for the west. But this is for another video. This was a lot of fun, right?
That was great fun.
Would love for you to comment, tell us what you think, if you agree, if you don't agree, if you have new ideas maybe about something similar or that contrasts what we just said regarding the differences between East and West. It was our first video. We hope you like it. Comment, share, please, and subscribe. And we're gonna see you next time, hopefully. Bye. Bye here also.
Bye.